From fitness routines to mental resilience, navigating personal goals to tackling burnout, we all need a little help with the tricky work of being human. Well, that is where the Life Kit podcast from NPR comes in. If you're looking to move with more intention or just need some thoughtful guidance on living better, Life Kit delivers strategies to help you make meaningful, sustainable change. This is much more than just a show that gives you practical advice. It gives you the support and the thinking you need to navigate some of life's trickiest decisions. For instance, we're headed into the fall. Those of us with kids or those of us in school are going back to school. This can be a pretty tricky time. Well, Life Kit has a number of episodes on how to support your kids, from setting up routines to dealing with smartphones to just trying to emotionally connect with them as they go through the tricky stuff that is being a kid and a teenager. And look, I listened to all these episodes. None of them provide a one-stop miracle cure to all of life's problems. That's not how life works. But when I listen to Life Kit, I feel more informed, more assured in my decisions, a little closer to having some of the tricky things figured out. As a parent, that's basically all I could ask for. That's not to say there aren't some episodes that are really helpful at a practical level. For instance, there's a great recent episode with tips for planning a vacation, and that one was quite useful. I think I saved myself a decent chunk of change after listening to it. So if you need help tackling common issues like relationships, finance, parenting, your career, and something that gives you a game plan that you can implement right away, listen now to the Life Kit podcast from NPR. Hello and welcome to This Day, a history show from Radiotopia. My name is Jody Avirgan. This day, September 18th, 1793, during the first large public event staged in the federal city of Washington, D.C., a cornerstone is laid by George Washington for the U.S. Capitol building. The building was originally named Congress Hall, but then Thomas Jefferson was like, that name is kind of terrible. Let's call it the Capitol instead. I think that's a good choice by Thomas Jefferson. And now plans were underway to execute on this design by a Scotsman named William Thornton. So here comes George Washington to lay down the cornerstone, and good thing that George Washington is a Mason, though he is not exactly that kind of Mason. He's the other kind of Mason, and this is our chance to talk about, I guess, both types of Masonry, the one where you lay down stone, and also the Freemasons, who are very important in U.S. history. And this ceremony was full of all sorts of weird semi-cultish proceedings along with the actual laying of the cornerstone. So here to discuss the Capitol cornerstone are, as always, Nicole Hammer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hey there.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
Are you either kind of Mason? Can you tell me if you are?
I can confirm that I am not the rock-laying kind.
Okay.
I have no connections whatsoever. None.
We have done, for the, I think, 500 plus episodes we've done surprisingly little Freemason stuff on this show, which is kind of
a shocking
so
oversight.
Yeah. So it's our chance to get into that a little bit. We have done a number of episodes, so I don't want to, retread too much, but we have done a number of episodes about why Washington, D.C. and the sort of design of Washington, D.C. and the idea that Washington, D.C. was going to kind of push away from some of the more monarchical architectural stylings that the founders were interested in getting away from. But anything you want to say about the kind of design of the Capitol itself or the vision for why the building would look that way, which brings us up to this moment where the cornerstone is being laid?
I just have to say that I feel kind of silly because I've seen the Capitol, God, more times than I can recall. And I always thought on the tippy top of the Capitol was an eagle. I don't know why. I thought it was like a big bird perched up there or something. Then come to find out, no, it's a soldier. It's a woman with laurels in one hand and I think like a bow and arrow in the other or something like that.
A sword in her right hand.
Sword.
And a laurel in her left. Yeah, and a shield.
Badass. Yeah, very badass. Yeah. And I was like, oh, snap. How come I never paid attention to that?
So much better than a dumb bird, right? Although I feel like putting like an eagle on top of your roof is very much a thing that they were doing at the time. No. I'm just in it for the Nicolas Cage of it all. I think that the kind of like we've talked about the design of the capital city, but that idea that it's laid out in this particular way that has all of these Masonic symbols hidden in it. When I say it's an oversight that we haven't talked enough about Freemasons, the weird like culty stuff that the founders were into and that Americans are kind of into over the course of U.S. history is so interesting because, as a Catholic, and we'll talk more about the Masons, but like as a Catholic, a lot of it just feels like Catholicism without like the religion at the heart of it, which I find fascinating, especially because Freemasons are super anti-Catholic.
No, and I think that's
Catholics
part of the
are
story.
super anti-Mason.
Yes, Catholics are super anti-Mason, and I think that's part of the story of the rise of Masonry and why it was, I think, so important, especially among the founders, was it provided a non-religious structure in which to have both kind of affinity with others, but also ideals and goals and sort of instill values while still trying to push a little bit away from the dominance of religion in a sense. And so it's no surprise that organized religion saw it a bit as a threat. Let's get into the kind of Mason side of it all. As I said, this ceremony is both kinds of Masonry, right? The literal laying of stone and the fraternal ritual. And I will try and do now a Freemasonry 101 in like 2 minutes, which is kind of the perfect way, I would say, to piss off a all-powerful secretive organization. I hope I don't butcher this too much. But as we said, like it comes out of stonemasons guilds, right? And a lot of those stonemasons guilds were built around the building of these huge European buildings. Often those were cathedrals. And kind of as the cathedral industry declines, in the 17th, 18th century, 19th century, lodges began, they kind of have a recruitment issue and they start admitting people who aren't actually good at stonework, right? They start just recruiting non-stonemasons to basically sustain their membership. So now you have the Freemason lodges, and that really takes off, moves from Europe to America. And in the colonies, Freemason lodges, as a fraternal society, gain a ton of popularity. They offer, as I say, status and connections and the sense of ritual, especially for, ambitious men. And no surprise, religious institutions see this as a bit of a threat. But yeah, I think the founders, 28 of 40 signers of the Constitution have ties to the lodges. And I think the founders who were trying to get away from the whole kind of religious monarchy vibe, separation of church and state, so forth, they were attracted to a non-denominational organization that still kind of instilled values that they believed in. So, Washington, Franklin, Paul Revere was a Freemason. Washington got one of the sort of highest orders of Masonry. And from what we can tell, he doesn't really know anything about actual building construction, but he still rises up the ranks. And then I guess I should also say that, like, there's all of this Masonic symbolism that shows up in the way cities are laid out and so forth, but obviously like the dollar bill, has the all-seeing eye and has all sort of other symbology and so forth. The Nicolas Cage of it all, if you will. But it is clearly like a huge part of the way in which the founders are building their civic ties. And so I guess it's not a huge surprise that this cornerstone laying is like basically a Masonic ritual. I mean, the formal invitation inviting people to come to this ceremony is addressed to the Mason community, right? It is kind of like a gathering of Masons, both kinds, I guess. And the ceremony itself is like full of all sorts of, sort of strange proceedings, but very much within the Masonic Freemason tradition.
What I think is so interesting about that, though, is that I think the popular imagination about the Freemasons and about these other secret societies is that they're just really secretive. And so this is this interesting moment where you see the rituals happening out in the open. Clearly we know of the membership of different people in the Masons. So the conspiratorial kind of version of Freemasonry sort of gets pulled into the light a little bit here in a way that I think is really interesting.
Yeah. I would also say that, a big part of it is the fact that it's a fraternity. I mean, it's a way for men to come together, drink, gossip, whatever, all of the things. And I do think that as you get, especially into the 20th century, and there's people are very suspicious of things that they think are cult-ish or cult-like. And so they try to position themselves more as like almost like a philanthropic organization where they're always sort of doing charity and good works and things of that nature. But it was meant to sort of have positive undertones more so than sort of like secretive, nefarious Illuminati kind
Right,
of
New World Order kind of thing.
Yeah.
This is actually so interesting, Kellie, because I have spent the last week or two watching Anne Helen Peterson's coverage of what's known as Rush Talk, which is the coverage of sorority rushes, particularly in the South, and particularly white sororities in the fall. And so it's all of these different women who are rushing and all of their TikToks following through it. And she does a real deep dive into fraternities and sororities in the Greek system as the site of elite reproduction and how those systems kind of work. And you can see a lot of similarities between the Freemasons and these fraternities and sororities, both around the secrecy, but also around that idea that this is where we gather not just for fraternity, right? Not just so we have community, but because we are elites. Meeting one another and coding on one another in really important ways.
I mean, part of the deal is to be able to say who's a member, right? Like George Washington's a member. Benjamin Franklin is a member. Like it's a name drop for a lot of these organizations. Even when you go to like Greek fraternities and sororities, it's all about like, Kamala Harris being an AKA. Like all of that is about the prestige and elitism of who's on your roster.
I'd be really curious if Anne Helen Peterson has thoughts on or observes whether organized religion feels a threat from the sororities, people finding fraternity through that in the way that I think organized religion saw a real threat from the Masons. But can we turn to the day itself? So the ceremony begins at 10 a.m. With Washington, and they are on the south bank of the Potomac River. They cross the river in order to pull this ceremony off. And what goes down?
I mean, it's kind of like a parade. It's a procession. You've got people joining from all of the Masonic lodges in Maryland and both Virginia. You've got music playing and some sort of like drum line. It's like a festival. I mean, people are really gathered there to see this ceremony of George Washington laying the cornerstone, and it's a pretty big deal. The fact that George Washington is there and that they have this trench in which Washington is going to step down into to sort of lay the foundation of what will be the Capitol. And there is this plaque that is in silver, and on the plaque sort of reads this line about how this is going to be the southeast cornerstone of the Capitol of the United States. And it says the day, the 18th of September on the 13th year of the American independence. And it talks about George Washington, his virtues, his valor. I mean, it's all meant to commemorate like everything that is happening in this moment. And George Washington steps down to do exactly that, lay the cornerstone.
Hey, it's Robin from PRX. There's a really special new show that I think you'd really enjoy. It's called The Selects Podcast, and it's a twice-monthly show that brings you sonic gems from the depths of web archives, radio streams, and early podcasts. Their goal is to preserve work, some of the best audio ever made, from getting lost to defunct podcast feeds, defunded programs, and just time. Listening helps give these works a new life. A lot of the pieces were recommended by some of the most talented audio creators today as having been the piece that inspired them to get into audio, so they're going to be pretty consistently excellent. Check out the Selects Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Please listen closely.
If it ain't got those hands, man,
You don't have to be gay to listen.
If it ain't got that stretch, if it ain't got those eyes.
This morning for breakfast, I had a toasted everything bagel with eggs and cheese and...
Well, folks, it happened. It's here. Fall is in full swing, and it is the perfect time to refresh your wardrobe with pieces that feel as good as they look. Luckily, Quince makes it easy to look polished, stay warm, and save big without compromising on quality. I am turning to Quince for all my fall staples that actually last. You've heard me talk about Quince on this show. You've heard me talk a lot about linen. Linen time, though, is over. It is now time for wool, denim, and even, dare I say, cashmere. Look, I never thought cashmere would be part of my life, but with Quince, there are actually pieces like cashmere sweaters and scarves and hoodies that are really nice and affordable. A 100% Mongolian cashmere sweater from $50. There's washable silk tops and skirts, perfectly tailored denim, all at prices that continue to blow me away. So keep it classic and cozy this fall with long-lasting staples from Quince. Go to quince.com/thisday for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/thisday to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/thisday.
What I love, one of the details that I love from that plaque is it's in the year of Masonry 5793. And again, this just goes to like the ritual of it. Like they have their own calendar system. Which is kind of amazing. I also got a little, I mean, obviously I know how history turns out, but I was like, oh, I don't know if Washington should get down in that ditch. What if something happens?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's true.
Well, I just keep thinking, you're moving all these big rocks.
Could have been crushed right there.
There are other, I think, largely derived from Masonic ritual ceremonies to this day. So they consecrate the stone with corn, wine, and oil. Corn represents nourishment, wine represents refreshment, and oil represents joy. For some reason, sure. I guess oil can represent joy. People are like start chanting as Washington climbs out of the trench. You know, they're very excited. It's like that Simpsons episode about the Masons, basically.
1,000%. That's what's been playing through my head this entire episode is just Homer Simpson getting the stone of shame put on his neck.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But after that, there's a 15-gun salute, one for each state of the United States. There's only 15 states at the time. And then it's a barbecue. And then they roast a 500-pound ox. I have no idea. This poor ox. I have no idea.
I was trying to decide, is that big? I mean, that seems very big. That seems,
big.
I don't know if it's big for an ox, but that's a lot of meat.
That's a lot of meat.
It's a lot of barbecue. Everyone, I'm sure, partook until it got dark and then people started to wrap up their festivities. But this was like an all-day gathering that you would be at and sort of celebrate and bring the family and kind of that sort of thing.
And there's some kind of both poignant and ironic things about this moment. One is that Washington doesn't live to see the Capitol open. He dies in 1799, which is right before Congress will first meet in the U.S. Capitol. And of course, the other thing is that it's, sure, there are like white Masons who are working on this, but it is also a mix of Black laborers and enslaved laborers who are helping to build the Capitol, who are building that Statue of Freedom that you've just learned about, Kellie.
Mind-boggling that the statue is called Freedom, and you have enslaved people creating the statue. Make that make sense. It doesn't. It just doesn't.
I mean, it's just one of those things from that period, right, where it's like the Statue of Liberty is helping to be erected by enslaved people, and the irony is not brought to the fore. And then it's a story of like what happens next. All of these like moments in the Capitol. Of course, the Capitol is burned down by British troops in 1814, and then it's rebuilt by enslaved laborers. There are various times when there are new stones put in. So Herbert Hoover puts a stone in while he's president. Eisenhower lays another cornerstone in 1959, gives a big speech about it. This is as the Capitol is expanding because, of course, there are way more members of Congress by the end of the 19th century than there was in the this moment in the 18th century.
Can I chime in to just say that we did that episode once about why we have the number of representatives that we have. And, 2 senators per state makes sense. You get 100, though there should be 102 at least. Why do we have the number of representatives we have? And over the years, like there have been a lot of, I think, pretty bad arguments for why to not expand the number of representatives as our country's population has grown and shifted around. But one of them has literally been there is no space for these representatives to sit. We can't expand this building, which again, I think is a bad argument, but it ties into what you're saying, NIki, that, a lot of the new construction is just because of this country's growing.
Yeah. And so in 1993, they're preparing for the 200th anniversary of this cornerstone laying. And the folks at the Capitol are trying to figure out where the original cornerstone is buried. And they haul out radar, electromagnetic induction, polarization, like all of these things, because they know that there's that like metal plaque on it. So like we are going to drill down and we're going to find this cornerstone. I was reading an article in the LA Times earlier where they were like, we don't even know if we're looking in the right place actually, because we can't find it anywhere.
Yeah.
Like there was this a huge ceremony 200 years ago, incredibly well documented, and nobody knows where this stone is now.
Which is crazy. Right? That they cannot find where this stone is. There was a architect of the Capitol, George White, who sort of suspects where the original cornerstone was. He's like, there's a piece of rock that is like 5 feet long, that is like a really somewhat square and ill-placed, and he assumes this has to be the part of the original cornerstone that was laid. But that plaque, no one can find that plaque. Like, nobody knows where that is. I suspect it was stolen, but
Me too.
who knows?
Yep.
It's
But
in some
wait a
Mason
minute.
Lodge in Virginia.
If you're going full Nick Cage here and you suspect it was stolen, that means it has to have been stolen like at the moment of the ceremony. Someone swiped in because didn't they drop an enormously heavy rock on top of this plaque and then immediately start building a huge building?
I'm not an engineer, so I don't know about
Yes.
that. But
Nor a Mason.
remember that episode that we did? I cannot weigh in on that.
Yeah.
Remember the Washington Monument episode we did many years ago, where those folks, like, listen, a bunch of drunk guys in the 18th, early 19th century, like tore a chunk of it off and stole it?
Yep.
I'm just saying,
That-
Pope's
there's a
stone.
history here.
There is
Could
a history
be.
of drunk people
Could
moving.
be some
Oh,
frat
yes.
boys.
You know, when you've got that drunk strength in you, when you've got that mead coursing through you, you can move a big stone. That's true. So maybe that's what went down.
So we might have a
underestimate.
Pope Stone situation on our hands.
There was a
man.
ceremonial reenactment of this in 2018 for the 225th anniversary. I mentioned that, one, because there's video of it. You can go watch the reenactment. But I mentioned that mostly because a 225th anniversary is called a quasi-quibicentennial. I had to look that up. How you get to 225. So thank God we're not doing that one, right? Semi-quincentennial is a lot easier than quasi-quibicentennial. No, I don't think that's how they name it.
No, nobody wants
Quibi
that.
Centennial? Okay, that was my question.
Just say 225. Just say 225.
Well, I mean, I actually kind of think this about
Deuce
the
and a quarter.
semi
That's all you got to say.
one, but yes.
Oh, my God.
All right. Well, look, as we wrap up, I will say we don't know where this silver plaque is. Some of us think it was stolen. I think it's just deep underground or, rusted through or whatever. But there are actually some artifacts from this ceremony that you can still go see. So the apron and sash worn by George Washington, it is currently owned by the Masonic Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania. So you might be able to go track that down. And then this is a very fun little piece of paraphernalia, but the trowel used by Washington during the ceremony, which, how big? Trowels are pretty small. I like that they gave him a little trowel. But anyway, the trowel that was used by him is at the George Washington Masonic Memorial located in Alexandria, Virginia.
I'm just saying they managed to keep track of the trowel, but not the big silver plaque.
That's suspect.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I came away from this episode thinking the Masonics are a perfectly normal fraternal organization that gives people meaning in this crazy world. And you came away with it just basically spinning up like 7 new conspiracy theories.
Yes, correct. I think that explains our personalities well.
Tracks.
Fair enough. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this episode about the Cornerstone. And we promise to do more Freemason material going forward. If you have any ideas, let us know. You can email us thisdaypod@gmail.com. But Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always.
Thank you, Jody.
And Kellie Carter-Jackson, thanks to you.
My pleasure.
This Day is a proud member of Radiotopia, a network of independent, artist-produced podcasts. Don't forget to sign up for our America250 Watch newsletter. Every Thursday, members get exclusive access to analysis and information about the upcoming semi-quincentennial, commentary from our team, and a list of fascinating things that happened that week throughout history. Join in, find out lots more at thisdaypod.com. You can also follow This Day Pod on Instagram, Blue Sky, and YouTube. Jacob Feldman is our researcher. Brittany Brown is our editor. My name is Jody Abergan. See you soon.
Radiotopia.